Welcome back to the Leaders Lab. I'm your host, Ken Eslick. Excited to have Matt Lavars on with us today. He is the founder of Relentless Education, a movement committed to equipping coaches around the world to learn the mindset, skills, and habits needed to build a business they love. Matt has also held the position of head trainer at Australia's largest coaching school, the International Coaching Institute. Matt's mission is to show people how to set themselves free through building a business that gives them choice and freedom. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, man. Absolute pleasure to be here. Really excited about where we get to take the conversation.
Absolutely. I had your partner and friend Andy Anderson on a few months ago. As you know, we had a great talk, so he thought we ought to get together. So I know you guys are into helping the people that help other people, right? You guys really train coaches, and you've been doing that for a while. As we discussed pre-show, at least for me, I got into coaching through my own kind of self-discovery and work I was doing on myself. And I kind of find usually there's something behind that with most of us. Where did this start for you?
Yeah, it was exactly like that for me. And I think I found like I've had the gift of being able, and I really mean it's like a blessing in a way of being able to train a lot of coaches because I've been able to see that journey over and over and over again. And I think it's a really special thing. So for me, kind of rough childhood, like I guess like a normal rough childhood, if that kind of makes sense. So it was kind of like run of the mill, but mom and dad broke up when I was really young. I got really angry and I got into drugs. Got into like the like DJing and the rave scene, and just I didn't have the awareness back then as a kid, but I was very much like escaping my problems through drugs and through alcohol and through partying. But I just thought that was normal. And then in my early 20s, I think was the first time I started to think, okay, there's consequences to this. So if I keep going down this pathway, and I knew people that went to jail, and I saw, unfortunately, some people commit suicide, and I saw people just get into some bad trouble. And I thought, okay, well, that's a possibility for me. Like if I don't just work something out here, I can't just be completely irresponsible my whole life. And for me, I didn't really have too many people around me that I could look up to. But I actually found that through employment. So I found, actually had a really, really good string of bosses. So one of the first jobs I had was selling like pay TV, and the boss I had, and it was Kath. She was like really together. She, dressed well, and she was a great salesperson. And I started to learn some things from her. And I think that was kind of the beginning of me thinking, I don't know the answers to all of what I need to know, and I need to learn from other people. And then I became a personal trainer. Same thing. I had a really good boss. His name was Bill, and he taught me a lot about leadership and just like how to, like, he was this big Samoan guy, but he like never raised his voice. He just commanded respect, and I was just like, wow, like that's cool, man. Like, how are you doing that? And then from there, I actually fell in love with professional speaking. So it was kind of like, again, I think another blessing. Like this guy came to the gym, and he ran a workshop on like mindset, and I was just blown away by this dude. I was just like, what is this thing that you're doing? Like, what's this profession? Speaking on stage, talking about mindset. And I was just blown away, man. It just, like, up until that point, I was kind of convinced that I was dumb because I got expelled from school twice. I failed what in Australia, what's called year 10, which is like pre-university, but like before college for you guys. Then when I found out about personal development, it sparked something in me. And all of a sudden I was like, I'm not dumb. Like I'm smart. I can learn stuff.
Do you
It
remember?
completely changed my life.
Do you remember specifically? Because sometimes it's like one thing, right? One
Yeah.
saying, one
Yeah.
phrase or something that someone did.
Yeah.
What was that for you?
Um, it was actually the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was a friend actually. So this actually, yeah, thanks for asking the question because I forgot about this. So there was a friend of mine, and it was in the gym, and he said to me, "Hey man, you look like you're ready for this. I want to tell you about this book. It's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. You should go read it." And at that point in my life, I used to say yes to a lot of stuff, but I'd never follow through on it. Like I'd just be like, yeah, man, I'll do that. I'll do that. If you said to me, hey man, you should come over and do this thing, I'll be like, yeah, man, I'll do it. But I'd know inside, I'm like, I'm not gonna do
I'm
it.
not
I
showing
just
up.
say I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I didn't really keep any of the promises I made to myself. And it was actually the seminar that I went to previously. The guy was speaking about you got to keep the promises that you make. You got to, if you say you're going to do something, I'd never heard anyone say that before. If you say you're going to do it, you got to do it. And anyway, my friend said, you got to read this book. And then I'm like, yeah, man, I'll read it. And then I walked away from that conversation and I had this new awareness that popped into my mind and it hadn't been there before. And it was like, you're not going to do what you said you were going to do. And I was like,
It's
yeah,
like it's like now you had the awareness of it, right? It's like you
fully.
couldn't
It was
turn
the
back.
first time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you're right. I'm not going to do it. And then I just thought, I need to break this pattern. And so I literally canceled a client and I drove to the bookstore and I went and bought this book. And it was like this, it was a really big deal for me because I caught myself letting myself down for the first moment
Yeah.
where I think previously it was kind of like automatic. And I went and I bought the book. And man, I'd never done that before. I just consumed the book like every day. People are like, what are you going to do when you get home? I'm like, reading the book. And I just did it in a week. And I think it was the first time I just fully consumed something useful. But the first time I also did it on my own account. It wasn't because school told me or my mom told me or something like that. I just did it. And the benefit that I received from that was just life changing. It was powerful, and I think that kind of set off everything else. The rest of it was a continual snowball effect that led me to becoming a coach, having my own business, becoming a trainer at a coaching school, now running a business that trains coaches to have business.
It's crazy when you look back for any of us. There's like pivotal moments, and it's like, well, what if you didn't read the book? I mean, there's a part of me that's like hearing your story that's like, well, it sounded like you were getting ready to receive information, right? Like, so maybe something else would have come along, but maybe not. Like, you never know. It's so crazy when things come into our lives at the right time like that.
I've often wondered about that. In my mind, I always think of them as like these sliding door moments
Hmm.
where it's like, what if I didn't walk through that door? Like I had another moment where this is a little bit fast forward, but I was um, now training to become a coach. I had some clients. I'm still in the school, and I actually reached out to them, and it was a big deal for me to say it. And I said, I want to become a trainer for you guys. Like I just want to let you know, I don't think I'm ready yet, but I just want to let you know, like that's my goal. I would love one day to be a trainer for you. And at that time, I was like having a go at running some speaking events, like just at libraries and just like wherever anyone that would listen to me. And I think it was a couple of months later, I got a phone call, and it was one of the trainers there, and they said, "Hey, Matt, we've got an opportunity for you." Essentially, they said, "We have an event on. No one else can do it. Everyone's sick.
Right.
We want to give you an opportunity." And I'm like, "No way! That's amazing. Thank you so much." I go, "When is it?" And they're like, "It's in an hour." And my heart sank, and I'm just like, I'm not ready. I
Yeah.
can't do it. That's just what I'm telling myself inside my mind. Um, and I think at that point, I'd heard someone say previously, I think this is a Richard Branson quote, something along the lines of, you got to say yes and work out how. Like when something comes your way, you're not ready for it. You got to say yes.
Yeah.
And I said yes to that. I was terrified, but that was the beginning of my speaking career. And I've thought many times, man, if I said no, after me telling them that I wanted to be a speaker, if I said no,
Right.
my guess is they would have not come back a second time because they would
Right.
have called me bluff.
How did
So
it
that was
go? How did that
a massive
first,
pivotal moment.
how'd that first
Yeah,
one go?
yeah. I don't think it went well, to be honest. Like I think like I was pretty average. I was very nervous. I think I was like running a class with slides, reading a script. So it was like, you know, real training wheels kind of stuff. But I got another gig out of that. And then it led to another gig and it led to another gig and it led to another gig. And I just kept on showing up like real nervous,
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Was there a
Until,
way? Yeah, yeah, go ahead. You were going to say until you got through it. I've got my own public speaking thing. I think I might have talked about it on the podcast, but yeah, go ahead. When did you find comfort in it, or have you?
oh man, it's such a good question. Um, it took me a long time to get confident in it and know, I guess, to have enough security in myself to know I can handle this moment and it's going to be fun and it's going to be enjoyable. Um, I think for me, the biggest fear that I had was, what if I'm in an audience? Because I used to do a lot of face-to-face stuff before COVID. What if I'm in an audience and someone knows more than me on this topic? That was my biggest fear. I'm like, what if someone put up their hand and they ask a question and they know way more than I do, and I'm just like caught out or something like that? That
Right.
was my number one fear. And so to counter that, I just studied like crazy, just, like an hour or two a day on everything that I possibly could on what I was talking about. And then I think I just reached a point, I would say probably a couple of years in, I reached a point where I realized that I knew more than the audience.
Mm-hmm.
I had read more books on the topic, or, I'd studied more on this, and I was able to be of value to them. That for me was the turning point where I was like, okay, I'm now of service. I'm not just an entertainer, you know, who,
Right.
who, who's able to speak.
Well, I think all that beginning stuff, it sounds a lot like imposter syndrome, right? Like, well, I'm up here, but there's probably someone better out there at it. And it's still some of that doubt, self doubt, it sounds like, from when you were growing up, right? Because now this is all still relatively new, right? Only a few years old, and you're leaning into it.
Yeah.
How old were you like during this time frame? So from the point you got, I don't want to say cleaned up, but like sort of went like, okay, I can't just screw around all the time and party and stuff like that, uh, to now. Is this like all throughout your 20s?
Yeah, pretty much. So it was like early 20s. The thing that actually turned it around for me was I became a personal trainer. So um, a lot of my career choices have been a little bit random. So I was working in a call center because my sister got me the job, and then a friend was like, "Hey, we can get you another job selling pay TV," and I'm like, "Sweet, that'll get me out of the telco industry." So I did that, and then I had a friend of mine, and he became a personal trainer, and I had a couple of sessions with him, and then I went to the gym, and I was never fit, never into sport or anything like that because I was taking too many drugs. And when I went to a gym and I saw a personal trainer, I just thought I could do that. Like
Right.
I could learn how to do that. And for me, it was fitness that turned it around massively, because when I got into, I became a runner, and I got into running, and I started lifting weights, and I got into boxing. And I just realized, I'm like, I can't do party life and fitness together. They don't go in hand in hand. And I just loved feeling good, and I'd never felt good like that before. Because I'd like, it's pretty interesting to think about, but I'd never had a good dopamine hit except for from ecstasy,
Right.
and all of a sudden I'm getting healthy dopamine from running. I was on top of the world. I was like, this is great. And I can wake up the next day and feel good. So that was the turnaround. And then that opened my mind into, well, now I need to, I'm making my body good. Now I need to learn about my mindset. And so it was about probably 24 to 26 was the kind of turnaround kind of years. And then now I think I'm 38 next year with
Did
two
you,
kids.
oh, nice. Did you give up the partying life completely, or did you just scale it down, or like what was that journey like for you?
I think initially through personal training, like I scaled it down. I would like every now and then I would go out on the weekends and stuff like that, but it became less and less and less because I think when I was taking a lot of drugs, I never realized how bad I felt all the time. And then when I started feeling good, I started getting this big contrast. Like if I would go out on, so before personal training, I would DJ on a Thursday night, stay up all night Thursday night, work drunk on a Friday, take drugs throughout the day, party Friday night, all through Friday night, and then maybe go to sleep like Saturday night.
E.
Um, and yeah, and man, if I did that now, I reckon I would die. That's how
Right.
much it would
Right.
affect me if I did that right now. Like I think I would probably take me a month to recover. Um, excuse me. And so yeah, it was a dial down, but it was probably over maybe about a 6-12 month period where every now and then maybe I would go out and take something, and then I would just think it's not worth it. And then eventually I just stopped. I just thought the pros and cons, I just weighed up, and I think about it like that now. Like if I could, to be completely honest, like if I could go out and have a good night, even just on a couple of drinks and have no consequence, I'd probably do it every now and then.
Sure.
But I'm a dad with two kids and a business and a wife, and I just don't have the ability to feel like crap.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
I just,
also, I mean, when I started breaking away from it, one of the things I was thinking about it a lot is everything that we do like that. I mean, we're doing it to change our state, right? We're doing it to relax, or we're doing it to have fun, or we're doing it to, whatever the reason is. And I'm like, but if you start learning enough about yourself, and I'm not trying to be Mr. High on life, but sort of, is
through that.
what is this external thing that I'm bringing in to evoke an emotion that already exists? It already exists. Like anything that this is going to make happen, it's already inside, right? It's just lighting it up, and there's all these negative consequences, like you're saying, to it. So, and I think whether someone's working on mindset or their body, you were doing a combination of all that stuff, or their career or whatever, I think you also start feeling, even if you're not consciously thinking about it, I think your soul starts to know that you're so out of balance, right? Because it's like, wait a minute, man, you just, you just taught an hour, personal training class. You just did this and that. You just did all this good stuff. And now you're just going to negate it all by, be no different than running and then loading up on fast food right at the end. Like it just doesn't,
Right.
yeah, it doesn't start sitting right after a while. So how did you parlay, I guess, where you were? Now you were becoming kind of a spokesman for or not a spokesman, but like a trainer for this organization. And you guys, and that organization was that the big coaching company?
Yeah, so we would train. That was actually where
Australia?
I trained. So it's like
Right.
where I did my certification to become a coach, and then I became a trainer for them, and then really became their head trainer over many years.
So, and that I think is like the same as like what ICF is in the States or something like that. Like you guys are Australia's certification board, sort of, yeah?
Not really a board, but we're a school.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if ICF delivers training, but I understand like they're a certification board. We would be under that and be at a school like delivering the certification.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So where does that go from you breaking out on your own?
What do you mean by that?
How did you take that experience and then move into like Relentless and everything that you're doing
Oh,
now?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm very, very grateful to have taken the time to work for an organization because, man, I just learned so. I'll always be grateful to them and give props to ICI for what I've learned around how to run a business and how to think properly. The thing that I've taken, probably the biggest thing that I've taken away from coaching is it's taught me how to think critically. And I had no idea before. All my decisions would be emotional,
Right.
and I would just make them on a whim. And I actually truly believed that, everything just works out. And, like there's kind of like, it'll be fine. And there's no real consequences to anything. That was my kind of view. And then I learned about how to think critically and how to approach myself and make decisions based on criteria. And it completely changed my life because I realized I had way more choice than I thought I had. And I had way more consequence to things than I thought I had as well. And so I actually worked for them for probably it was probably like an 9 year period. I was running a business in the background as well throughout that time. Um, and then what actually happened was my wife got pregnant with our second child. So we had my son, Noah, who's 3, my daughter, Naraya. Actually, they're born on the same day, which is just the craziest thing. And when we had our second child, my wife had very, very bad pregnancies both time. It was crazy. And so I actually took a year off and I was thinking about nearly quitting coaching. I nearly gave it up. One of the things that happened was through having kids, I came back to a faith in God. Previous to that, I threw that away. I was just like, religion is dumb. Spirituality is dumb. I was pretty judgmental on the whole thing. Like I grew up in a Christian family, but when I had kids, something shifted in me. And I was just like, it kind of like, I don't want to live as if there's not a God. Like I'm not, I believe there is. I hope there is. I'm not one of those people that claim to know everything about it, but I'm like, I want to live like there's a God. And when we had these crazy pregnancies, it was really, really scary. I started to pray before I was, I call myself a Christian now, but I started to pray because I had nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting because that spiritual life that then started to become alive in me made me question if I wanted to become a coach anymore. I went through like a bit
Yeah,
of a transition.
what was the debate in your head?
Yeah. So for me, what I found that a lot of coaching was, and this is my personal opinion and not a recommendation or a judgment on anyone, but just how I want to live. Because I'm a big believer in, I think we need to let everyone live the way they want to live. You know what I mean? Like if you believe a certain thing, like I'm all for it as long as you don't break the law. Like go
Mm,
for it. And I think that's the only way that we can live together. So what I found in life coaching was you end up, so you get empowered, right? You know, make better choices. But personally, I found without believing in something greater than yourself, you in a way become your own God. And so you worship yourself. You become the most important thing in your life. And I saw that over and over and over again. People getting to the top, I guess, of like personal development, but then they'd kind of become like nasty. They'd become mean. And I saw
right.
this over and over again. And I think it's a generalization. I understand it doesn't happen to everyone, but I saw that happen a lot. And then I found faith in God and I was like, I don't know if I want to be part of it anymore. I feel like I want to give glory to God and not be in this education that's all about worshiping the self and prioritizing the self as the most important thing. But I think I just needed to give it some time. And then I found the balance, you know,
Right.
and now where I'm at now, I think that they go very much hand in hand together. I'm such a lover of coaching. I think that, you know, anyone should become a coach and do mindset training. Personally, I just think that it goes better in having a faith or having some type of like understanding that you're not the center of the universe and that there's something else
Of
that's
course,
greater
yeah.
than you in whatever that is.
I think where people get hung up, and certainly where I was hung up too, Matt, is that so there's religion and there's spirituality, right? So
Right,
sometimes we
right,
get this beef with religion because it's rules and it's
right.
contradictions and it's like whatever, and obviously a lot worse than that over some of these religions over the history. And I don't claim to really know what I'm talking about there, right? But that's just in my mind. I'm like, I don't want that. Like I don't want what they're serving up necessarily. And so in my mind when I was younger and well into my being an adult, it was like, you know, I lumped spirituality and religion into one thing. So it was like, oh, I never really wanted to say I don't believe in God. I just say, I don't know, but like whatever, there's probably something, very non-committal. But the thing is that to your point, if there's not something greater than there's always something greater than just ourselves. The power of us collectively is a power greater than, you know what I mean? Like, and you don't have to label it anything and you don't have to subscribe to anyone's particular model of the world and go to church and do all that. I think it's just this idea that there's, and that's how I choose to live too. And I'm also okay with people not doing that. But hardcore atheists to me are as bad as super hardcore shove it down your throat religious addicts, right? Because
Totally
it's
agree.
the I'm so convinced that what I'm saying is right that I have to convert you to my opinion, whatever it is. And I'm not
Yeah.
down with that. But the one thing that I'm glad that you found was, I mean, I feel that, and I think it was David Goggins reading
Yeah.
his book where he talks about, and I'm hacking it apart, but when he talks about having this vision of his life being over and there being someone with a clipboard like allowing you in and whether it's God or somebody representing it, and I'm hacking his story a little bit, but the meaning will get across. And part of the reason he does all the things that he does, all these crazy ultra marathons and things like that, and I may choose to have a different vehicle than him, but it's sort of like he doesn't want to get there. And we've all kind of seen that quote where, one of the worst things would be being at the end of your life and realizing, or meeting your maker and realizing that the better version of you kind of left it out on the field, right? And never had anything. So I think this idea of helping to help other people and to get better at yourself and personal development, as long as it's not rooted in ego or led with ego, that it's very godlike or very spiritual. Like they can not only run in the same lane, they can run together. I mean, I think that if we envision a God, like just say a God that's going to be all knowing and everything else,
Right.
I think that God would be happy that the universe, the people that he created are striving to do their best, right? That and as long as that's not based again in greed and everything about the self. I don't know if I'm articulating that the best way,
No,
but
man, I completely agree with you. I think that that's the danger of too much personal development without maybe a bigger framework on top
yes,
of it that says, why are you doing it in the
right.
first place? Like, if it's not for love, and if it's not for making the world a better place, or just even like loving your neighbor, whatever that is, loving your kids, like, for example, like, it'd be so easy. I see this all the time, to be the dad that just works and says, look, I'm providing, but I'm never going to spend time with my kids,
Right.
and that has serious consequences. So I think that if we have a guiding North Star, whatever that star is, that says, I'm going to better myself and be a more loving person. It's one of the things that I don't understand about, like, the world is becoming overly politicized at the moment, and people are saying, it's like, we want equality, and it's like, but we're gonna like fight you for equality, if that kind of makes sense. Like, we're
Hmm.
gonna, if you don't give it to us, we're gonna beat you up. And it's like, I always think, like, where's the love in that, man? Like, that's not convincing anyone of your movement. That's just, you're kind of contradicting yourself. The only way I think we can make anyone believe anything is if we love them first, and if we truly do that, which is,
Sure.
I think that's ultimately the work, is to love people and to love yourself to the best of your ability, but not, like you said, in this egotistical, I love myself and I'm, the most important person in the world. And, I see that a lot. I don't think it's good for anyone.
No, and I think for coaches, it's like, where are you getting your? We all have the need for significance, obviously,
Right.
right? But what's giving your significance? Is it the $1 million you made coaching, or is it the lives that were changed by your coaching, right? And you had something. I was watching. I looked you up on Instagram, and I was looking at some of your reels, and you got some really good ones on there. And you had one on um, the phrase like "money is the root of all evil." You had it on the other day, I think, and you were like, money's not the root of all evil, but the worship of money could be the root of all evil, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And it reminds me of that. It's like, it's okay to feel good about your accomplishments. It's okay to feel great about your accomplishments. And it's okay to feel great about like the money that you're making and stuff like that. But if that becomes the North Star, and it was for me for a while, it's very unfulfilling too. So not only are you not serving others, but
Totally.
it's a road that leads to nowhere. And I feel like so many of us that have had to go through that, and on the other side of it, on the way to fulfillment is normally service and contribution, and like you said, those are rooted in love.
Totally. I think it's such an interesting thing. Like, I think we're made to worship something, and we have to prioritize something, whatever that thing is, and you just get to choose what it is, and things have consequences. And, I think money is the same as a drug in a way. Like, I've been addicted to pornography and sex, and man, that's a you just head to the bottom. There's no good there. It doesn't come out in a good place. There is no breakthrough where you go, oh, and now I have a great relationship. Like, it's just your sense of self and the way you view men and women, it all just deteriorates through watching too much pornography. And interestingly, I find money very similar. It's like, if you just focus on acquiring stuff, you just continue to acquire stuff. And like you said, it's not black or white. So it's not that, okay, so then be a monk and sit on the hill and don't acquire anything. I think that you can build a great life for yourself and have choice, and, like, live in a great location, whatever it is, but make your number one the difference that you make, or being there for a friend, or, helping out a community, and just like actually being of value to other people as a primary. And then I think it just sits right. Something about that, you can sleep easier.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about the difference between, or when you started with that training institute, the learning critical thinking over, emotional reactions. And I learned in recovery kind of this idea of, being, we all come from the universe. We're all connected with the universe and with consciousness, or we strive to be. And if I can just take a minute to engage in that and understand like how this all plays out, I think everything that is going on is kind of happening for us in a way if we let it, right? I feel like, there are reasons that things happen. I'm not trying to get super hippy dippy on it, but like There's reasons that things happen. There's lessons to be learned. And what's really funny is when I look at it, like I look at the money thing the same way I would a single person who's desperate to be in a relationship, right? Everybody they come around, they just cling on and they, oh, you know, and then they worry about losing them, so they smother them and they this and that, and the person runs away. And I feel like everything energetically to me works the same way. Like if you want to attract money into your life, I think yes, you got to take action to do the things. I'm not talking about just manifestation, but again, if you put it up there so much on a pedestal, it's going to run away. If you do the things you need to do as a person, as a leader, as a father, and some things that make sense, and you'll have some wins and losses. I've just found the looser the grip on whatever it is that you want in your life, the easier it flows into your life.
For sure. I think that the biggest example I could use for that is just like growing your business,
Yeah.
and selling to people. I know exactly what it's like to just be in that scarcity place where I'm like, man, I have to close you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I need that sale. And I never do well in that space.
Right.
I've never done well. I think my biggest lesson is work really hard to just pay the bills, like take care of finances so that worry's not there, and then make everything bonus. So it's kind of like the way I think about running my life is just like the bills are good, the kids are good, the wife is taken care of. And then if I get this sale or I don't, or whatever, you know what I mean? If I get this deal, this next thing that's in front of me, yeah, another one will come around. Like if this doesn't work, it's going to be someone else. And interestingly, through that space, I do really well.
Yeah.
Because I'm not needy. And if anything, I turn people away. You know, I'm like, nah, we're not a match. I don't want to work with the best people. And so it's such an interesting energy to what you're saying, and it applies to so much in life. And I think it's challenging when you're actually in financial scarcity. That's the hardest bit. And I think that's probably like one of the most important things people can do is just like, and that's why I love what we do with business, because if someone is in a place of financial scarcity, or if they're in a job that doesn't give them the choice that they want, if they work really hard for a period of time, then they can shore themselves up financially, and then they can get through that stress. And I think that's probably one of the most important things. It completely changes your life to not have to worry about that.
I'm the head coach for a different kind of mastermind. It's for recruiting agency owners, because that's like our main business.
Yeah.
And same thing is you know, it is tough to tell that person who's just starting their business that's waiting to close their sale, or maybe they've been at it for a little bit, but cash flow's tight. Recruiting's been weird, right? There was this huge boom right after COVID, and now for many industries, it's gone a little flat, like depending on you know, their growth. And I can hear it when they're talking, right? I can just hear like I gotta close this guy, and it's like. I remember a quote from a Tony Robbins seminar I went to called Wealth Mastery, and I think he opened it with, or actually it wasn't even him teaching, it was somebody else, but it was put on by his company. And it was like, the first step in wealth mastery is actually realizing that you're there already. And that by being in this room, even if you're on the low end of this room, if you're comparing yourself to others, you're in the top 2% of everybody on the planet. Like when you look at what's going on in, you know, the Middle East and all these other countries where, you know, if you have the means to be in that room, you're in the top 2% globally. Most of the planet lives on $2 or less a day. I mean, it's crazy. And yet we're going, but I've got to make the Mercedes payment or whatever, you know, and it's like you, if you put it in perspective, what you could be grateful for, if you really wanted to take your mind there, in Australia, in the States, in these places that are developed where, you know, you're generally making really, really good money compared to the rest of the world. So anybody can come into it with a scare. I mean, I know billionaires with a scarcity mindset, right? Not personally, but you know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, it's all a state of mind. So tell us a little bit about the company that you and Andy run. You guys, it's primarily coaching coaches, and it sounds like you guys get in the weeds with helping them structure and run their businesses as well, or get their businesses off the ground.
Yeah, for sure, man. Just before I answer that, I just want to just acknowledge what you said, because I just think it's so integral, and I think people overlook it. Just that the simplicity of that perspective. You know, like if I think about it, Australia, we have government funding if you don't get a job. So which I think is very different to the States. So it's like, if you don't work here, you can still get money.
Right.
And that money, it's not much, but you should be able to pay rent somewhere, and you'd be able to afford food. You won't have too much choice, but the sun still shines. There aren't people running around killing each other on the street.
Right.
You're generally safe. You can have any religion you want and pretty much get away with it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we are just so safe and well looked after,
Right.
in a developed world. And I think that if you realize that the lowest, I used to say this. I thank you for bringing it up. I used to say this in seminars. Like, you have to face the reality that if you start a business in Australia, the lowest you can fall to is the government will pay for your food, and the government will pay for your house. And then from that place, you could probably start another business.
But you'll have food, and you'll have a house, and you'll be safe, and everything will be okay.
And that's as low as it gets.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not talking about, you're probably, like, I know some people end up homeless still in Australia through challenging situations, and I don't want to judge them at all, because it's hard for anyone that goes through that. But the majority of people, you're going to land on your feet. And I think if you have that view, like you said, like, maybe you got to sell your Mercedes or something.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Maybe you have to sell your house, whatever. But that's still way better off than someone right now who doesn't have a home, who can't go turn on a tap,
right?
Doesn't have that, or like
communities without running water, communities without electricity. And then I'll catch myself going, my computer got glitchy, you know what I mean? And it pissed me off. And I'm like, Jesus, I gotta settle down.
I need
a
faster MacBook Pro. Exactly. I need a better chip.
That's it.
Yeah. No, thank you, man. So what we do is, so my business partner and I, so Andy, who you've had on previously, he's been in business for, I think, about 15, 20 years. We've known each other for about 12 years, which is a real, a great relationship. We never thought we'd go into business together. It just happened. And I'm so grateful, because when you go into a partnership with someone, you have to have a phenomenal amount of trust. And we've just been brothers for a long period of time. We've seen each other rise, fail. We've seen each other handle setbacks, and just been there for each other throughout this long period of time. And then this window opened, and we were like, why don't we do something together? I've got the time, you've got the time. We've kind of ended things perfectly at the right time. And so we've taken, Andy's got tons of experience in business and leadership and mindset. He's raised millions of dollars in capital for different franchises, and just got so much experience in hustle and business building. And I've been in the coaching industry, really just deeply with my head in coaching for the last 12 years. So we put those two things together, and we work with only coaches specifically. So all different types of life coaches, business coaches, leadership coaches, health coaches, all mindset coaching, spirituality, whatever it is. And we run an implementation mastermind. So we're really, really big on people making money while they're with us. We know a lot of people, they'll spend a lot of money on education, and they'll put it on the shelf.
Right.
They'll keep signing up for courses, but still not do anything. And I think a lot of people get trapped in thinking the next course is going to save them. And so we're very big on, we're only going to enroll you if you're willing to take action tomorrow. And then if you're willing to back that up for the next 356 days, and we're going to hold you accountable, and we're going to give you a great system to follow. And we do a lot of done for you stuff. So we build out a website for people, and, help them with the tech and things like that. But ultimately, it's a space for people to take a lot of action, because, of course, as you know, it's only action that really creates any change. And if you're not doing anything, nothing's going to happen. And yeah, we work with two different types of people. So ultimately, we work with brand new coaches and help them hit their first probably 5-10K months. And then we also work with people that are a bit more established, already at that level, that want to transition into a one-to-many group kind of style business, and start making more, $500,000, $1 million a year in their coaching business. And essentially we're like a sales and marketing machine. So we're not really big on coaching people. We just want to teach them the skill set of sales and marketing. And when they have that, that's what changes everything for them.
Very cool. And we'll definitely put every way to connect with you in our show notes. Finally, tell me a little bit about your family. You said 2 kids now?
Yeah, man. So Yeah, I've got a son, Noah. He's about to turn 3 in Feb, and Naraya, my daughter, will turn 1. Yeah, man, they're awesome. They're like the best, and they're the hardest thing that I've ever done.
Yeah.
It's like, man, like in contrast, running a business is the easiest thing I have in my life
Yeah.
compared to being a parent. Tests you in all the ways, but I also am so grateful for it. I think I'm such a better person with them in my life. They challenge me to be a better guy. Even just being married, man, like my wife challenges me to be a better guy. And I just think I'm actually a big believer. I've heard Jordan Peterson say this, that when you have kids, when you have a family, the best thing that can happen from that is it forces you to care about things other than yourself,
Yeah.
because you have to. Um, and yeah, man, I love my family. I'm so grateful for them. I feel, in a way, like I feel, and I don't mean this coming from a low self-esteem perspective, but I feel like I don't deserve them. I
Yeah.
mean, like they're just so good for me
Yeah.
in a way. Do you know what I mean? That I'm just like, oh, I'm so grateful every day that I worked this out, that I got this.
I think there's this built-in leverage. Sounds like kind of a harsh word when we're talking about people that we really love, but on ourselves, right? Because we'll let ourselves down. It's
Right.
sort of like we tell ourselves stuff like, I'm going to do this and that with my health, or I'm going to do this and that with my business. And then if we don't, really talk about it, it's like, what's really the consequence? But I think
Yeah,
when
we
you
can get
start
away with
having,
it.
yeah, when we start having kids and get married and stuff like that, I think there's this, I remember in our first business, we were really young. My wife was still a teenager, and I was like 23, I think. And we borrowed money on like credit cards and stuff like that, and started this business. We weren't necessarily, I mean, I guess we were trying to have kids. It was just more like, hey, let's just see what happens, right? About a week after, like, and it was like a week after we signed for all this money and started our business. So literally like 7 days into starting a business at 22 years old, she's like, hey, guess what? And I'm like, that's amazing. And like, holy shit, you know what I mean? Like I've got some work to do. And it just pointed me in this direction. Now, in reality, looking back on it, I think my mindset was, hey, if this doesn't work out, I can just get a job. Like, who cares, right? That was my mindset before. And looking back on it now, I still could have just gone and gotten a job, but that's not what I thought at the time. I was like, this will ruin my family, right? Like, I have to make this work because I don't want just a job, right? I want like a better life for my kids, and I want to be able to provide for them. And our son came along like 4 years later, and it was almost like another shot in the arm of like, okay, it's another mouth to feed, another person that's going to go to college at one point, not in a burdensome way, but in a really cool kind of emotional way that I'm not going to let them down, right? Like I'm going to step into this.
Yes. Yeah. I think that I think that family is an opportunity for us to be a leader.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, due to our own traumas and our own challenges, we don't step up, and then that becomes a problem center. But if we do step up, it's an invitation. We can lead the family and provide, and obviously sometimes that's the mum that provides and the dad stays home or whatever, or it's single parent doing the whole thing. But I think that once we're able to do that, then it can spread out into the community. I think it's kind of
Yes.
like the epicenter is the family. And then outside we go, okay, well, now I've got some left over. And I'm like, what do you guys need? What do you guys need? What do you guys need? And I think that's kind of the way it's supposed to be. I think that's
Yeah.
gonna, because if you think about it, if we don't have family, and I'm not like judging anyone who doesn't have kids. I got like lots of friends that don't have kids, and they're awesome people. But if the majority of people don't have family, I think that we're going to lean a little bit too much towards being kind of selfish,
Yeah.
because we don't have to do anything. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like you said, it's like, well, you don't care if I don't work out today. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You'll just be like, sweet, man. You know what I mean? Have a cookie.
Right.
But, if I don't have energy for my family, or if I can't provide or do the podcast or whatever, it's like that has serious consequences. So I think those consequences are like integral
Right.
in making us better people.
Well, I don't know if you've heard this before, if you guys use it like a version of this or have created a version of this, but I know with Robbins, I learned like 7 steps of creating lasting change, and people can find on YouTube or whatever. But, the first one is just you got to have rapport, but the very next step is you got to have leverage.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because when someone doesn't have family, I've got to find some kind of leverage, right? Like, and it's usually people, right? Because we will do more for someone else than we will do for ourselves. And so if they're struggling to make a change that they haven't made before, like that's something we always need. So if it's built in, that's great, right? It's amazing. But hey, I've really enjoyed talking with you. Time flew, actually. I didn't realize what time it is right now. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. It's taken, I've been meaning to get you on here for a while, and I know our schedules were about 15 hours apart, I think. So it's nice to finally get you live here on Zoom.
No, thank you, man. I really love connecting with you, and I love what you're doing and what you stand for. And it's really good, man. I'll make sure I keep following.
Thanks, brother. Me too. Take care.
Thank you, brother.